Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, and esteemed attendees, online listeners. Now we're starting the second day of the third international conference dedicated to challenges and prospects of Russia in terms of ecotourism. My name is Dmitry Kolosov. I am in charge of environment and sustainable development at the Rosa Hutor Resort. And before I introduce our speakers and before I announce the start of the discussion on a very relevant and exciting topic, I would like to say that yesterday we experienced a really huge technological failure which interrupted what we have planned for the second part of the day. But on behalf of the organizing committee, let me share our apologize for this failure. But all the discussions were recorded and they will be posted on the website of the conference, so they will be accessible openly for anybody interested. And today we hope that we are charged with technology, we are charged with our enthusiasm, and we are starting our discussion, which features very interesting speakers. Together with us today, at this stage, we have Daria Sekina, Children Camping Trips Planner from the Laboratoria Puteshestvi, which is the travel laboratory. And we are honored by the representatives of the regional tourism administrations, and I'm introducing Sergei Korneev, chairman of St. Petersburg Tourism Development Committee. And together with us online, we have two principals from Moscow schools. Pavel Severinets, principal of School 444 from Moscow, and Dmitry Isaev, principal from School 1852, Moscow. The topic of today's discussion is as follows. Yesterday, we touched upon a number of different issues that have political importance. We have considered the existing situation from the standpoint of its political and legal regulation. And we have outlined a number of different issues that interrupt or are on the way of implementation of many things that the wider public expects from all of us. And yesterday what we discussed has shown that the industry of tourism in Russia, the ecotourism, is not a blooming garden, so there is not much to boast about. But at the same time, we have seen that in the sphere of kids tourism and nature recreation trips for kids, there are some roots and there are some grassroots initiatives, but still it is not a very smooth development. But let us not consider the entire landscape of this topic in a gloomy way. And then, if we take this standpoint, we will understand that there appear certain initiatives which can be considered as the supporting pillars for future development. But some years ago, in our country, participants of travel and tourism activities were lots and lots and lots of Soviet, at that period of time, citizens, younger tourists, but also older tourists, and people who are of senior age today. They remember the so-called pioneer camps. Practically each kid in the country had attended such a camp, and it was a well-organized, very sustainable system which integrated kids from the early school age and provided lots of activities till they grew up to be adults. Unfortunately, we have wasted this experience in and we would hardly hope to restore it in the manner as it used to be, and I'm not sure that we should, but so that to involve more people in recreation activities and tourism, we need a certain policy and we need a certain agenda. And let us speak straightforwardly. This is not the area in which you can earn profits compared to the profits you can earned by selling outbound packages or outbound on exclusive packages for tourists. And to this or that extent, the support on the political side, legal side, institutionalized side, it is of demand. Moscow demonstrates to us that they have an approach to this, the approach which allows both the participants of the nature tourism and ecotourism activities, the organizers, and the kids involved, and the government of Moscow just to work, to collaborate in a convenient way. Adults send their kids on trips, being sure that these are well-organized trips. Representatives of schools also are in a relaxed manner because they know that many things have been arranged, and if kids fall ill or something, there are measures to take. And as for the government of Moscow, they support the entire movement, and they are relaxed that there should be some borderlines crossed in terms of rules and approaches. So that's why we decided that we should consider this experience today here and discuss it with other regions. And it is a great opportunity that we have Sergei Korneev with us today from St. Petersburg Tourism Development Committee, and he will be the side which will help us not to just focus only on applauding to the best practices, not just only praising them, but to see some critical things that need also some discussions and reconsideration. Dear colleagues, I invite you also to discuss the values of the approach that has been developed in Moscow, and let us accept it as the sort of a framework or a carrier which incorporates lots of things that have already been arranged. Daria, I'm giving the floor first to you because on your shoulders there is the responsibility of the person in charge of kids' trips. And besides, you also are positioned on the side of planning of such trips. So please do share with us. And then after your presentation, I will give the floor to the principals and then again. Good morning once again, Dmitry. Thank you very much for inviting me to take this floor again. In fact, I agree that what you have mentioned is relevant. There is a sort of an approach, which is a system approach, which is the approach of collaboration of several institutions. So like the Laboratory of Trips, the NGO, but also the CAP, located in Krasnodarsky Krai, and also Moscow schools headed by the principals. So this is the scheme. We see that they are in collaboration. And I think that what is important is that all of them are united by one convincement that active tourism is the golden bottom, as we say, of the world economy, where we can dip for lots of benefits and wealth. The founder of this system, which I have shown, is Matvey Shparo, an outstanding traveler, explorer, and a polar explorer, and the honored master of sports. Together with him, some colleagues also established in Karelia and Krasnodar Krai a number of kids camps, but also the special center for kids trips in Moscow. And before I go into details of how collaboration brings results, And before we discuss the technical side of arrangements for such trips, let me tell about the philosophy behind this concept. Over 20 years ago, Matvei Shparov started this journey from a revision of our perception of kids' travel, which we had as the heritage from the Soviet period, something which Dmitry has just mentioned. And I would say that many travelers share their experience of rethinking daily life during their trips. Quite often, during the trips, people experience many things that we omit in our daily experience, perhaps for many years. The trip, as it is in its Soviet concept, is the thing to develop the spirit, the durability, physical durability, endurance, and also communication with people. And when kids are away from their parents, they grow much faster on such trips, and they become more independent and self-reliant. And in this way, a trip from the Soviet philosophy was a part of the educational experience of younger generation. But at the same time, people didn't consider it as anything outside of just a daily relevant experience. Of course, there were the aims and objectives that defined the trips, but also on the trips, there were no special educational activities that would be integrated into the program. There was no discussion in the evening that would be drawing the lines to the experience of the day. And unfortunately, because of this, many values have been just wasted. And as a result, when Matvei tried to rethink all these things, he came to the following conclusions. There is a way of finding more values in the trips, and this can be done through the assistance to children in their awareness of the value of the trip. And it was important to then revise the content of each trip and to put on the agenda the objective of living in the, so creating some experience that would be the lifetime experience for kids, the life-changing experience in the best meaning of this concept. And if the instructor or the guide on a trip would be not just guiding, showing the ways, and not only the guide in charge of the safety and security of kids, but would be also responsible for provision of the psychological support and support to the self-accomplishment and development in the way that the person, the kid, the young person, would be given freedom to self-express on a minute-by-minute basis the impressions and analyze the day as it is going from the point of view from what is good and what is not so good, what I like and what I do not like, and what should be mastered. And if the guide teaches how to self-reflect on the experience, then effect of such a trip would be much more beneficial. And if the guide introduces certain kind of training sessions, developing the personal traits and also some skills, the young personality, the kid, would be able to learn how to communicate with the team and how to control one's behavior and conduct. So that was 20 years ago that Matvei considered to rethink the concept of a trip for kids. And then he decided that this needs not just thinking, but practical actions. And that's how there appeared the term which can be translated as the planned trip. When the trip is considered as a journey from A to the aim through development of different experiences that shape the skills and personal traits of a kid. And then a trip is not for the sake of the trip. It's not just for fun. It is much more. This is the passage of some training, the period of some training. And today the laboratory of travel and the camp, which is called the Big Adventure, have developed into a very straightforward system, which is well-grounded, which has the methodological foundation and lots of experience analyzed for all these years. Let me now speak about details about each of the above-mentioned organizations. So the camp, which is called the Big Adventure, is located at the foot of the mountains in one of the settlements in Krasnodar Krai. Next to it, there is the National Reserve, Caucasian Reserve. So this is how the camp looks like. And this camp has the entire infrastructure, which provides for the convenience, but also safety and security of kids. There is procurement with the necessary equipment and products. There is a special stock of equipment somewhere on the trail. There are showers, there are toilets, there is the canteen, there is much more, which I do not mention here. But so this is the convenient and safe place to stay at. There is a special person who is in charge of this camp. He is in charge of developing the routes. He is in charge of the safety. He is in charge of training the guides or instructors, as we say. And there is also communication with the emergency emercom team through the satellite communication. Each team has the connection, and just in case they can call for help at any moment. This experience is a unique experience, but it can be multiplied. So the participants, there is a special analysis conducted by a special team of inspectors. They always analyze before the trip and after the trip the entire preparation and experience of travelers. And in this way, our camp is the heritage, to some extent, of the system of Soviet tourism for kids, which had disappeared years and years back. But the value of this heritage, the main value, is that this educational experience of kids is arranged in a team headed by two guides or instructors. So these are in the Soviet period, there were some sort of caravans, as we say, that with only one guide for several teams. Now we have it in a more secure planning way. So the routes cover some territory of the Caucasian National Reserve. They start straight from the camp, and they do not need any special vehicles that would take them into the reserve. They travel along the Caucasian National Reserve, but also Большой Kach, and in the falls of the mountains, across the mountains of the Karachaevo-Cherkess Republic and Adig Republic. And when these routes are prepared, the organizers, and it's important to remark about that in the framework of our ecotourism conference, that there are principles which we could call the principles of please do not leave your wrong footprints. You have to collect your waste, you have to dispose of the waste, whether on the route or at the camping sites. And this is the awareness which is shaped in the participants of such trips, so that other travelers would not suffer from the littered sports, but also a great attention is given to the knowledge of participants about tourism, about the territory, about the skills that they have to master, and the guides or instructors, they are in charge of this education. But also the guides themselves need to be trained in psychology, educated in teaching methods, because they need to be aware of the specifics of the kids' psychology, and this is a very important part of preparation of such trips. Let me say some more about the laboratory of travel, Laboratoria путешествий. This is the non-commercial establishment under the government of Moscow, which is in charge of program development aimed at development of social competences and skills of kids. So while the camp, which I mentioned above, is the team which is more practice-oriented, then this is more theoretical laboratory which designs the plans and routes, and they design them in such a way so that to resolve any sort of psychological problem which a kid might suffer, or achieve any other pedagogical aim. The specialists of this laboratory, the experts, they design programs with orientation at resolving of certain psychological pedagogical objectives. For example, how to manage time, how to manage the project, how to manage and participate in the teamwork. Kids write their diaries on their trips. They participate in team building activities, for example, the rope activities, and they analyze, the experts analyze how they cope with these exercises. There is the method of splitting groups into subgroups of 5 on the route, and a very important arrangement is every evening they have the session sitting around the candle, and that's when they discuss the outcomes of the day, experiences of the day, and become more aware of the experience they have lived through. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't want to take you too deeper into details on the psychological and pedagogical preparation of the trips, but let me say that there are 2 important things you have mentioned in passing, and let us focus on this. First of all, we understand there is this special state establishment, which is non-for-profit, which is under the government of Moscow, which is in charge of developing certain educational products which are targeted at kids, Moscow school children, who through these products become the participants of the camps and the trips. Starting from these camps, then they travel through the entire territory of Moscow, of Russia, from Moscow to the camp, to the national reserve. And when the trip is over, they come back home and they share the experience with their friends. This is great. And another thing, what is happening in this system, in this sphere, is the access to the golden bottom of the modern pedagogical science. Let me show the video, but also let me give the floor to the principals of Moscow schools, because they have their own vision from their standing. On the one hand, we see the values that are pedagogical values, but on the other hand, there is your role inside of this system as the co-organizers of this practice. This is my question to the principals. Do you consider this, do you perceive this as something as is given from the top for you to implement? Or are you involved because you understand the value of this as something which builds the experience, the values, the skills of the kids? And the second question is, what's for you in there? What's the value of all of this? Why should anybody be involved? Is it just for fun? Is it just for experience or what? So, or is it a part of your integrated activity, and you find it as an integrated part of what is important for your school? And why this is important? Why the industry should care? And this model, is this a model which can be recommended as the model of bringing the created product to the end users, which is ready-made product? So I'm giving the floor, Dmitry, to you. I understand that you are one of the leading principals of schools in Moscow.
Good morning, dear participants of the conference. Thank you, Dmitry, for your kind words and your good records. So I don't think I am the very leader. I'm one of the members of the team of the principals. As for the topic that we discuss, I think from our side, the side of the teams of the principals, we see when the laboratory offers us a safe and comfortable and interesting product. Here we also can say that all the pedagogical opportunities of a design tailored to is not explored yet. I mean that every leader can tailor, can design and create any product for himself or herself based on the templates provided by the laboratory. And therefore, he can work with his children and focus on youth relationships or focus on activities for people with disabilities. So any tasks can be met and implemented by using these tailored routes. It's a set of tools and instruments, and we need to understand that school does not only teach but educate and raise right behavioral patterns. So that means that we use these bricks in order to come up with our own product for our needs. The laboratory is quite flexible to meet any requirements. If we send a requirement to design a trip based on our technical requirements stated by the principal, the laboratory starts working on that, and therefore they come up with a tailored tool, and then they upscale it and they offer it to the network of schools. And I think this is the uniqueness of the laboratory that defines them and differs them from anyone else. They can come up with a tailored specific tool based on basic bricks, and therefore they can meet any requirement. This is important for us. Thank you very much. I would like to sum up the presentation. So the teachers, they value the product such as the trips and outings to the nature because they think it's an instrument of training and education. Am I right? Yes, you're right. And it is a unique instrument. There is no something like this, or let's say it's not an easy thing to find. So it's an instrument of education and teaching and training. So do you think it can become part of the curriculum of the middle school? Can it become a separate subject as part of the curriculum? Let's say not the heroes surviving camp, but maybe some basic skills on how to live in the forest. Is it part of this course for basic things to save your life, or is it something different? Well, I absolutely think that it's already taking its place in the curriculum, and I think Pavel will comment on that. But I would like to get back to you afterwards. Okay, thank you. We are very happy that we have two principals, and as long as you're legal people, there should be three opinions between two of you. So Yesterday we had a discussion, and a question we faced the responsibility and commitment of the principal in this system. And some people say that a principal should not step into this, should be very careful, take care of what he has, and not go into terra incognita in terms of this dedicated tours for children, safety and security for children and the nature. So there are a lot of issues. So it's very interesting to know your opinion, how you look at it and how you implement it. So we give the floor to Pavel. Good morning one more time. I'd like to get back to the first part before the responsibility of the principal. First of all, I would like to derive on Dmitriy's opinion. Indeed, tourism is a model course as part of the curriculum of our agenda, and it takes up to 3 months, 1/3 of the school year, from 6th to 9th grades, and it is definitely a part of our curriculum. Every kid takes part in the hiking activities, and they get grades. We have weekend trips. They cannot choose what season they would like to experience these trips, autumn or winter or anything. So it's part of the curriculum, it's a part of the plan, and they cannot skip it. It's a comprehensive thing. It's a wonderful opportunity to practice different things, and we do education, we do training, but we also take it as the way to tune their behavior, to set the patterns for their lifelong experience. So right now we start speaking about the state request towards the laboratory of trips. It's a technical requirement that we set. It's a bid process. We refer to the laboratory of trips. We send them the requirements and request, and then we get their feedback and answer. And I, as the leader, as the principal, understand the importance of the product, and I can buy this product from the laboratory of trips. I can buy an existing product, or I can ask them to design or to help me to design another tailored product for my needs, as Dmitry said. When we speak about children, I must say we do not limit ourselves with only trips for children. We work with adults. We do team leading and team building programs for different generations and age groups, and it is very important and it is very comfortable. At school we have 3 travel clubs. We can get kids ready, we can train them, we have all needed equipment, we all needed staff, and we work together with the laboratory of trips, and they work with the club of great tours, and they involve us in the experience, and there is no need for a kid to have the background in outing, in trekking, and hiking, in great exploration. So they can enter the system, they can enter the community, and they will be taught, they will be educated, they will be trained how to behave themselves in the wild nature or in nature on the whole. Thank you very much. So this is my vision as the principal. So I would like to get into the details at this point. Please get the presentation back on screen. So we had this model with arrows, and dear principals will get back to you. Sergey, I would like to express your opinion. Stated, we have this Moscow experience with this system of subsidies distributed within the budget institutions and schools of the that provides for the financial support, and we want to speak about funds distribution. So you, as the budgetary institution of the Moscow entity, you have this budgetary institution
такого особенного нет. С точки, ну или может быть не совсем.
So we speak about the Moscow experience, and we want to know about your experience and how you distribute the subsidies. So basically, the structure of education does have this budgetary institution to distribute the subsidies and funds, and it is still part of the education product. The laboratory of trips is not only 1 week trip and project, they also have qualified instructors and teachers, equipment good enough to match the product well. So the principal can be comfortable to offer these products in school, offer it to the parents and families and kids. And it's not only about the touristic skills that they come up with and teach, but about good educational process. So now we know the process of Moscow, how it is built in Moscow. Now we want to know your opinion, as you are from another region, from the northern part of the country, West Northern. So how does it work in St. Petersburg? You have this regional center of youth tourism, and I think it's part of this all-state system. And yesterday we have a chance to listen to the presentation from the federal level within the Ministry of Education, that they build the system through the country. So do you have something at your place? When I was a kid, when I was a school child, I was sent to the pioneer camps, and I was very young, maybe elementary school. I went there together with my mom. She was a doctor, and it was part of her job, and she just took me to be part of this. And it was somewhere next to St. Petersburg in the northern parts, and I remember there were a lot of lakes, and I remember myself going there in winter times, not only during summer. So I have a question. What is your experience? How does it work at your part of the country, and how do you feel about this experience? How does it work in St. Petersburg? So what is your opinion then? So I would like to set the agenda. The Department of Education, the budgetary institution next to this system, is a very well-equipped camp, and schools do trust this system, so they send students. So how does it feel? I will start with the second question, and I think it's the main question. As for the scheme, the structure itself, we all refer to the Soviet experience. It was a system-based, it was very comprehensive, very tuned, and indeed, it was a definite system. It's a question, good or bad, I think very positive. So we all know about the Soviet experience, and now we know about international projects like scouts, camps, and so on. And now we want to come up with new schemes and how we can use this background, or best practices, as they say. So what do we want to do? Where do we want to go based on our experience and background and modern knowledge? So this system fails to be very well balanced, but we face some issues, and we want to solve them all together. The first problem is school as a customer or a client. What is school in this scheme? And yesterday it was touched upon, and today we refer to this. A lot of things depend on principals or leaders in the school community. But some of the leaders, they are concerned to enter these new projects outside of the school responsibilities that refer to outings, hiking, trekking. And some principals, some leaders, they try to do it themselves within the institutions. Maybe it's not the right way, because you need support from parents. And for example, my school, we have very proactive parents. They can come up with anything and they will get support. Children get support from their parents. But I think it's quite mature, and they feel it's under control. Thanks to God, they work with partners. They have a pool of partners, and they assist them in outings and trekkings and trips. But still, it is a question: how professional is it? What is this partnership with other institutions? We know there are professional touristic organizations and organizations that focus on working with children and youth groups, educational, scientific tourism, entertainment, this wild nature, hands-on experience on sites, all different types of products. So they try to, we also know the scientific project that try to come to schools and embrace children into the actions. We understand that there are different types of tourism, not only nature but mixed. And if we speak about western region, this format is very relevant for us in terms of climate and geographical conditions. When I was part of the Ministry of Education, I remember the times how we all started together with this project of My Russia, how we started getting children all around the country and educate them in history and culture of the country. So it was a target program, and I remember this experience. Another thing that is a plot of regional experience, and we'll here speak about funds or foundations focused on rehabilitation. It's a part of social agenda, and then they referred to the Federal Service of Social Security. So it was refocused, let's say. So it started as a rehabilitation program for youth and children, and they start traveling to camps, and it's part of rehabilitation, restoration, health restoration programs. But they're professional tourism system players. There is scientific educational tourism. So they're all different things and all different characteristics and nature of the products. The thing is that we want to bring it to professional level, and I believe in dialogue with principals, and if we talk and communicate with each other, discuss the needs, then it can resolve many of issues and questions and concerns. Another thing, how to implement this story into the basic curriculum. I think algorithm of cooperation designed and approved should be the way to solve the gap, to cover the gaps and to solve the issues in communication. I think it's not only about the one common two operator for such needs of education and school groups, but it's about this one window approach, as I say, this one-stop placement of the application of any client, if we speak about that, or customer from the system of education. I think scheme, structure, algorithm should cover the issues if it's professional enough and good, well designed and balanced. So thank you very much. And I would like to ask another question.
So we have discussed over 40 minutes the value, the social value of such trips and the social mission of such system, which is supported by the state, because this is the system of how to bring up kids in the spirit of responsibility, social communication, and so on. I agree. There is the demand on behalf of the parents, the families, the schools, the kids themselves who would like to be involved in something exciting. But this is another time that when we model any system like this in any entity of Russia, so then the demand might be ignored if we do not consider the demand. Okay, I agree that there is a demand, and the state also is the agent which has its demand for kids to be educated. Yeah, but in the long run, everybody is interested in more or less the same things, education of children. Well, when I consider Moscow experience, then I think that we are asking then Daria again to specify whether the laboratory of trips as the state-run center of kids tourism should be considered as the aggregator, which is doing its part of job and then passes on these trips to be implemented by other agents, or whether this is sort of well, I think that the laboratory of trips should not be considered as the organizer of safe trips only. I think that the mission is much broader, because the center regularly communicates to schools, conducts together with the schools the educational on-site events that are arranged in Moscow without leaving the region. And the functions of this laboratory of trips as the state-run center is much broader than just provision for the safety of kids. Okay, then back to our principles. The principles of schools. The question is, how do you choose and how do you feel? What do you feel when somebody approaches you with the offer of organizing a trip to some place in Russia for school children? Dmitry, if somebody from the government of Moscow or from just Matvey Shparo himself or the third party or the parents or kids come to you and say, we would like to organize a trip. So what is the algorithm of your activities? You have experience with the laboratory of trips, you have experience with the government of Moscow. How does this system help you to take the decisions? And how does it save you from the toxic environment in case we consider the fate of the kids' trip from the point of view of an abandoned area? Okay, let me comment. First, when somebody approaches me with a suggestion or offer to organize the trip, my feedback would be always positive. I always answer yes, of course, because the system has been established and it is well proven. And we talk here not only about the laboratory of trips, but also some other entities, some other centers that also are involved in similar activities. And depending upon the aims which I set or we set for organizers of such trips, we choose the partners. This can be the laboratory of trips, this can be the kids regional center for kids trips and so on. So, but we, the principals of schools, are concerned with security less than earlier, less than before, because now we understand such centers that they are experienced, they know how the security should be provided, and I know what they offer because I participated in many of such trips, and I know what it will be like, that the program is provided in a secure manner, that there are lots of experiences and activities involved, and I know the regions where the trips will be taken. Okay, I will ask, speaking about the objectives and goals, we have 3 clubs, and these clubs were born as the feedback to the demand from the kids and families, and the mission of such clubs is to teach the life survival skills and basic skills. But when I combine the educational objective with some other objectives, then first of all, I turn to the laboratory of trips, because the product which they offer is not just a trip. It's not just a tourism experience somewhere out in nature. It is first of all an educational experience, the work of teachers, and several projects in which we have been involved. They were involved with a contest of projects that were focused on Karelian nature resources and ecology, and kids who were involved, they made trips to Karelia, studied something there, and presented their projects at the contest. And also I'm involved in the other activities, for example, trips to Krasnodarsky Krai, and every time the educational objective is the primary objective. And I'm not afraid of sending kids on such trips, because I know the organizers are experienced, and but I choose from the point of view of an educational objective. Okay, then let us come back to Sergei's presentation. But I would like to ask if in this sphere, which is the Mosel piece, which is the very interesting, exciting area of joint activities, and the market is huge. I think it is well beyond Moscow. And on behalf of the industry, is there an interest on behalf of the industry to approach schools, and whether you are aware of this as the market, as the segment of the market? Do you see the prospects of this field in terms of tourism development? And so far we have heard about the educational part, the role of schools and educational centers. And as for the private agents and private travel agencies, it feels like they are standing outside of this scope, and aren't they afraid of entering this field? What's happening? But the other question is this market profitable potentially? Is there any money? Are there any funds? Because if, for example, the distribution of this money between the budget of the family, the budget of the school, the budget of the government of Moscow, so then how can this budget be shown, say, schematically? What's the share of the budget of the family in this entire fund? Okay, let me just join in by saying that the majority of things that we have conducted are free trips for kids subsidized by the government of Moscow. This is the state order, as we call it, for provision of such activities. Second, there are NGOs that also have their own funds. The NGOs involved in out-of-school pursuits and professional development of kids outside of schools. And the third source are the subsidies that are compensated or are provided by the Department of Education of the government of Moscow. We used to consider it as the external operator, which provides funds not only for kids but also for schools. But right now, the budget of such trips that used to be calculated as in terms of money as the person per trip, right now we calculate this budget differently. We used to use our budgets and then tried compensations from the government, but it was a complicated scheme from the point of view of approaching the funds that are legally available. And then we turned to a different approach involving families' budgets, parents, and you see that there was the registration of the fund with the governmental bodies, and this fund was to provide for ammunition, for provision, for food, for travel expenses, and so on of such trips. And again, for parents, it costs nothing. So parents do not pay for such kids' trips. It just takes for them to decide whether they allow the kids to be involved. So once again, the volume of funds is not very huge. So if they do pay something, this is perhaps not more than 5 or 10% of the entire budget. Okay, but what about the annual flow of kids involved in trips? So how many students are involved on the annual basis? So speaking about the number of schools that study at your schools, then how many participate annually? So we had 12 trips last year. That was the usual year. 12 trips involving 150 students. So that means that nearly every student has participated in such trips. And every year there is the surplus of kids who are willing to join in, because practically we have 4 buildings of schools, 4 campuses, and we have the tourist club. And starting from the primary school, we involve kids. First they go to the nearby destinations, and as they grow, they take trips outside of Moscow and so on. Okay, 150 kids per year per school. Sergey, now I turn to you with my questions. So what we have arrived at is as follows. We have the system which is fully funded by the state. But let us jump outside of the educational system and turn to the private sphere of tourism development. Because education is state, well, it is not right. I think that we all are going along the way of subsidized tourism, and I think this is rightful. This is the approach which we should develop. But the question is there an algorithm for getting these subsidies, for organizing trips out into the nature, eco-tourist trips? So I think that this is the only possible mechanism of subsidizing such trips, and I think that this should be subsidized. And even in the market situation still, and there are many organizers, institutions, tourism centers that also have earned trust of the public, who know where to take trips because they participated physically, and they have gained experience on such hiking trips in and around St. Petersburg and in Karelia and Valdai and some other oblasts. And I think that in each subject this can be approached differently, because this experience which Moscow shares is fun, it's interesting, but I think that the only right mechanism, as it's been said today, is that subsidized tourism should continue. There should be also some coordinator or operator who would be partially responsible for all arrangements of other players, and the subsidies should be distributed through this center, I think, among the market players, partners that are involved. And this will invite more and involve more players, more professional organizers from this system of tourism, those who are professionals in tourism. But there should be some parameters by which they should be guided. For example, which topic to take and make the program on, which other parameters should be considered. What do you think? This coordinator, this institution that you right now mentioned, which should be responsible for planning, for cooperation, for coordination, for distributing the funds of subsidies. Where should it be? In Moscow, in St. Petersburg, or should... Well, it doesn't matter. I think that it can be somewhere in between some organizations, in between some institutions, but it should have the mission of serving the needs of kids in education and enlightenment, in health recreation on the one hand, but on the other hand, so that all the best things that have been already created in tourism, I mean, the experience in planning the trips, in involving the hospitality infrastructure and so on, that they would be available for such organizers of trips. So, but as for where this structure should be based, I think that the approaches can be different. We cooperate with our partners, colleagues as we call them, and we don't see that there is any issue in how this collaboration can be structured. Of course, the issue is whether we are able to balance between different objectives, harmonize health recreation with educational activities and so on and so on. But as for the system approach, there should be some coordination entity. Okay, so this is the interface between educational, health recreation, and tourism spheres, and in each subject of the Federation of Russia, I think that there should be a special approach. I think that this can be subordinate to some ministry or some federal service, depends upon the sources of funding, but the main thing is that the system is really a healthy framework on which we can rely when we plan a similar development, so that there should be a coordinator, there should be some requirements that are transparent, that for all players, and this is the open system. And as it's been said yesterday, many are afraid of taking the initiative or taking the responsibility because they are afraid of approaching this sphere. But it shouldn't be the sphere where people feel at a loss. And Pavel, my question is to you. We have the two principals of Moscow schools who I think are the leaders among other schools, perhaps most active, most experienced, and this was the experience of learning by mistake as well, but now they can share their experience. And let us just think about an average school, an average principal, perhaps not as experienced and perhaps not as aware of what these trips are about. And this principal faces lots and lots of daily challenges in his own primary activities, and there are lots of objectives that he has to juggle and balance on a daily basis. And how you, Dmitry, you, the head of the association, which was recently founded by schools in Moscow, how do you share your experience? How can you provide support and your experience to others, to the newcomers in this system, those who are cautious, who are afraid of who are afraid of sanctions, who are afraid of some fractures of legs of kids, of some illnesses that might happen on the trips? What can you share so that to help them overcome these fears? If you allow, I will go back and speak about the model which we have created. A small presentation. So we start with what we see as the scheme for the Moscow system of education. This scheme that was born inside of this system of education. On the one hand, we have a wonderful wonderful players like the Laboratory of Trips and also the Sports Center for Youth Tourism. So these organizations, these entities have been successfully operating in the sphere of kids tourism. They conduct lots of activities, and at our Center of Youth Tourism and Environmental Studies even has a consultancy service. And, well, excuse me, Dmitry, I have to interrupt you. But this is on the one hand. But on the other hand, we have the pool of directors. There are kids who have experience of being very active in kids tourism. And on the grounds of such schools, they have the clubs of their own. Hundreds of kids from these schools are involved in trips on a yearly basis. They contest as teams. during these trips, and so on and so on. But the overall objective, if I rightly understand your agenda, is just to multiply this experience, this model, across other regions. And I think that in these terms, the starting point for us was the project which we called Principal of the School Taking a Trip. And I could talk a lot about this, but this is in a couple of words. The planned activity for principals, when the principal delegates his management to the team running such trips for kids. What have we identified as the result of this experience? This first experience was the first stimulus from some other schools to catch up, to catch this wave, as we call it, and also to be involved in such activities. So this is to answer your question whether all the schools are interested in development of such trips. The project which I mentioned has shown us that realization of such trips involves other principals who lack some tourism experience. They don't have the sufficient procurement and so on. But so we saw the interests, we saw the wish of many principals, but they didn't have the capacity, or they didn't have the instruments for implementing such trips. So the projects that we undertook, it gave us the idea that there is a demand on the part of the kids, of the principals, and we decided there should be an association founded with the main mission and objective of motivating directors, the principals of schools, to get more involved in such organization of kids' trips. So in other words, this is the mission to reach out for the wider public of schools and involve more principals. And it is very important for us to conduct such activity together with the partners or colleagues which I mentioned above. And this will provide the result, the effect, which will allow the multiplication at larger scopes. And once again, this is through the involvement of principals as the key players, the motivators, the initiators. So these principals should be involved first of all. But why this model turns to be so efficient? Because we have involved the principals, we motivated them, we trained them as managers of the centers of youth tourism. And I think there are three types of attitudes that we feel exist in the community of principals. One attitude is critical and negative. There are principals who are afraid of trips. The second attitude is hesitation. There are principals who think there are good things about the trips, but they are not quite sure how to start, where to go, and so on and so on. And the objective of our association is to involve those who have the third type of attitudes and experience, so who are very motivated, who have experience. They should involve those who are hesitating, and they have to help them learn the necessary skills and knowledge of how these trips can be arranged, and show how unique the educational capacities of such trips are. And yet another important point is that many principals even don't have any idea of which educational opportunities and which educational objectives can be resolved as part of this entire youth tourism field. So by involving principals in such events that we organize, we give them experience, and we showcase that any activity can be free. It can solve lots and lots of questions. And as an example, I will give you the example of best cases from Moscow. The project called the Principal on a Trip which trains principals. And it gave birth to another project which is called the School on the Trip, when colleagues, the principals motivate their teachers during these trips so that they would not be afraid of sending kids on trips. So the tutors, and yesterday much was discussed about this, that the tutors, they need to be involved. And also another project is a teacher on a trip. This is can be considered as the teacher training activity. There is some practical part already on the trip somewhere in Moscow, but there is also the preparation part, which is on site in Moscow. And also there is a cultural trip project. And for example, some character protagonist of some literary work, or the person whose name is given to a school. So the program of a trip is associated with this or that personality. And
another wonderful project, the Arctic trip, that was a wonderful team building for Moscow school children. It was a real expedition, and principals were going through the competition to take part. So it's a great example of motivation, of promotion of youth tourism through and at schools and educational institutions. And to conclude my brief presentation about our model, I would like to quote St. Augustine, who said that the world is a book, and the one that doesn't travel reads the only page of this book. So all together, we must put all the efforts to make sure that our children do not only read one page out of this book, but to make sure they will be able to read the whole book of life, and we have all the opportunities and tools. Thank you very much. I'm so happy we've touched upon this topic as how we motivate, how we put efforts, and how the state supports, contributes, and how we fall within the state system of subsidies, how the public institutions enter the system. And right now we've touched upon the level of the professional community that within itself develops the values and promotes the values. And I wish you, as the association, do not focus on Moscow only, but to spread your experience, to go beyond the borders of Moscow, and to spread your wings and fly through the whole country. And it's wonderful. We're happy to get acquainted with your experience. And now I would like to give the floor to Dasha. We have not much time left for this open, let's say, microphone session. We have still the time left to take the questions from the audience. So please sum up what is the result of the programs, what is the bond result. So I want my presentation back, and I would like to also touch upon the social oriented programs. I will be very brief. I think it is crucial, and here I come back to the term, the tailored, the designed tool that is the basis for uniqueness of the tool. We can say that we have common projects of our laboratory of adventures in the camp, the great adventure. So we work together, and these designed tours are giving opportunities to the special schools hosting and working with children with disabilities to participate in the adventures and outing programs. We also offer programs for children with lacks in behavior, the so-called difficult youth and children. And if we have a group of 9, let's say, kids with no problems and one kid with such behavioral problems, the effect for such kid will be tremendous. So this inclusiveness of such children with problems with behavior into this healthy, let's say, behavior groups is very valuable. And referring to your questions, Dmitry, about the values and results, yes, I wanted to ask, what is awaiting for them at the end of the trip? Is it this picture that you wanted? I think yes. Well, the video that you also speak about, Dmitry, referred to the project Director Goes Hiking program. But here I wanted to bring this final picture of this kind, this motivational, this very balanced energy that we feel from the picture. So thank you. Okay, I think we should pause here, and I'm so happy that we had Sergey as opponent. So Sergey, coming back to your region, this West Northern Federal District, could you please frame your ideas based on our discussion? So this constructor that we studied, the experience of Moscow, we studied it in details within the whole session. What is your idea? And we spoke a lot about this society, community of Moscow principals and Moscow schools, and it's a unique experience. I don't think we have something like this somewhere in Russia. But what do you think as an opponent being part of the discussion? Well, you see, the idea, the model is not new. Here, I think the true value is not the model itself, but the community that implements the successful experience. And we've seen the presentation, and I refer to this as well, and I hear a lot about this. This fears and myths. We should work with myths and fears, and we should fight with them. So when we see this experience of association of the inter-school community, this cooperation of principals with the corporate ethics, let's say, and how they bring their efforts and forces together. So this is the community that is grown within the community, the association within the community. And here the role of state institutions is clear: to define the mechanism of subsidies, to implement the subsidying. But this level of involvement, of commitment, of professionalism in this part, provided by the principals, is the core of any system that we discuss. This is the driving engine of the system. So here we need to understand and to see the examples of personal way of these leaders of the educational community, of schools community, the principals, how they share the best practices, how they share the experience, and how they fight fears and overcome the difficulties. This is what we need. We can send subsidies, and we must do it. We have good experience in Moscow at federal level, and I've mentioned about that, and I've talked about the models. We understand the models. We have money. We can send it. We should send it. We can come up with subsidies. But we can have a system when we are ready to send subsidies, but the schools say, no, we don't need it, we don't want it, we don't step into this, it's too much of concern and fear. So then we need this feedback from principals, how they take it, how much proactive they are. The model is efficient, is working, and if we tune it, as far as I look at it, when it's not a closed system but an open system that requires functioning and this one-stop approach and this platform of sharing the experience, this proactiveness of the leaders, of the members of the community, this very healthy and vital exchange of opinions and experiences, then this is how it works, and this is how it will work. So we We need to tune, we have the riverbed. The riverbed is school itself, the parents community, children community. We are water and we can bring water, but we need this riverbed to make river flow. So I think this is the way. But I must say the project is on the way, but varies from region to region. As for the traditions that you referred, the trips and pioneer camps and outings and outdoor activities dated back to the Soviet times. In our region, it is the history, it is the tradition, so we have this very strong platform to work on. Our climate, our nature, our geography in our western northern region district of Russia is very open for this system. And despite of COVID-19 time, we had a project at Kronstadt Island, the Fortress project for school children. So we have things to analyze, to discuss, to upscale. So Dmitry, Pavel, your work requires the highest grades of appreciation. So thank you, you're wonderful. And I encourage all of you not to rest and to go beyond the borders of the Moscow, or let's say capital regions. And we have from our community, from all around the country, requests to share your experience, to follow your experience. So please don't rest. Go and talk to people, to the society. I must say about St. Petersburg and the region, we have a request, a demand for this type of project. So I will contact our distinguished principals, participants of our discussion to send us more information. So I'm happy because this is my idea of the conference, how it should work, to bring people together and exchange the experience and ideas. So we have time left for questions. We have 3 questions, step by step. And so I have not a question but a comment. Okay, and I really still want to have this motivational video from the community of Moscow principals. We really want to have these vibes. That will be the end. So I represent the generation of genius school, and we at the Baikal region, at the Baikal Lake, we launched the scientific educational camp, and for children when they come and together with scientists explore flora and fauna of the Baikal Lake, and there is a system, a situation when they go hiking, and together with biology scientists, they explore the nature. And we were trying. We had attempts to access Moscow schools, but we did not succeed. I'm mother to 2 children, and I understand the concerns of the principals, their responsibility. But we are ready to get our programs and products get through expertise. So I have a question. Dear laboratory, dear principals, we have a wonderful product. How should we get it distributed to the customer, let's say? We need this feedback from professional community. Our product is wonderful. We have wonderful feedback from our children and youth, and they are wonderful kids because they are enthusiastic about science. How can we enter your community? How can we present our product to make sure the Moscow region children come and explore the Baikal Lake? Thank you very much. I think your target audience is Moscow schools. Is that correct? So I think probably principals should answer. Do you want to go to the Baikal Lake? We do not only want, we go there. We have partners in Buryatia, and we hosted our camp with the school number 56 of Ulan-Ude. I now hear from you that the program is designed, set, and ready. Our association of travelers is in the very beginning, but I think in some time we'll start expand our experience and to carefully look at different opportunities and to involve more schools in our association. So we'll wait for your materials and we'll study your experience. And St. Petersburg says, don't limit yourself with only Moscow, go further. I know there are schools that are focused on expedition tourism, and they love it. So I think this topic will be relevant and of interest to our community, and we'll be more than happy to come and visit you. And you can have our contacts from our website, so let's be in touch. Let's stay in touch. Okay. A bid and deal is set. I'm happy, says Dmitry. So I represent the community movement of lovers of protected islands. How I look at it, there are interested schools all around Russia. There are protected areas around Russia in every region. And these protected areas, they have scientific and public awareness departments. Most of them can host organized groups. My child is a school student of Moscow school. And we also go to the expeditions to the protected areas, and I see that you know the expedition that I talk about, so that means that you all know each other. It means that your community of schools works. So we think that the best form of education is the camping experience, and we have methodics and we have scientific approach that we determined. So I'm happy we are part of it, and you understand what I'm talking about. So there was even experience when the state was sending some funds to contribute to support, and I remember the project when our participants, they went and had a camp next to Bargozin Reserve, and there were some fears and concerns, and I was talking to them saying, don't be afraid, let's talk about it, let's send a letter with our questions, and let's name your fears. So we talk, and we recommend to contact the Federal Reserves in the regions and to work with them. They are open, they are ready, and are offered to develop the system through the community. You have the community of schools, and there are other communities. And when they bring schools in and regional schools in and small city schools together, and we as the protected areas also have. So the association of the protected islands does exist for many years, and it is very integrated into the reserve system of Russia. So when we speak about the federal reserves, every institution of a federal level has this education and information departments, and they work with public, they work with tourist groups, and they want them, and they can do it, they know how to do it. So this association of friends of the protected or reserved islands is a good model, is a good scheme, and it is very proactive. And I cannot not to give the floor to Mr. Mendelevich. We are so happy to have him at our conference this year. Thank you, and I want to stop in here. I am surprised. I want to see the faces. I'm surprised that Sergei didn't mention the organization named the Baltic Shore. That this organization in St. Petersburg takes the same function as laboratory of trips in Moscow. And if there is a chance you do not know the leader of this organization in St. Petersburg, I will be more than happy to get you acquainted. So I kept thinking how I started working as an instructor at a children youth camp, and I came to the conclusion that it happened in 1965. And I think that not only Ms. Sekina but Mr. Kolosov probably were not born, and I was an instructor. And please don't get offended. It's a benefit. It's an advantage that you have. But I have my advantages and memories of what I had at the time. And I very often meet people, and I namely mean public authorities representatives, and people that start thinking about the creation of world dated back to the date of them entering their position. So I know Dmitry Shparu maybe from the time when he was born, and I'm still in very good friendly relationship with his father, Matvey Shparu. And Dmitry Shparu, my good friend that I know for many, many years, and I last met him 2 weeks ago. So I must say, not everything was so bad in Soviet times, and I here want to state, when you say what was going on in the Soviet Union and say that there were some negative issues, I cannot stay away and say that you're not well educated then, because when we speak about children and youth tourism in Soviet times, it was never a mass one. A mass tourism was a tourism for adults, not for children. So the system of children tourism was completely different, and it was a system of children tourism centers. In 1992, it was an instruction approved providing the guidelines for youth and children touristic groups and trips. And it says the youth children group should not number more than 12 kids. We don't speak about mass tourism. It's not about children tourism. So please be careful. Thank you very much. But maybe may we come back to this idea of comparison, maybe, yeah. So I would like to take my time and to express what I wanted. Do you know that in Soviet times there was the Academy of Children and Youth Tourism and Regional Studies, and it still exists, and I'm an academician. The founder was Mr. Stapets-Sveshnikov, the first doctor of pedagogical sciences in Soviet Union, and his diploma was dedicated to children tourism as an instrument of breeding breeding children. So we cannot say that only you started with this nice little things about children tourism, like evening campfires, bonfires. No, it all existed, and we had the system, the network of state children tourist stations or centers, and they were not only focusing on touristic training, but on education and behavioral management. And of course, there were smaller stations where they trained only and taught only touristic skills. So please don't open something as a new thing. It's all existed, and it still exists, and I'm surprised that here we don't have representatives of this Academy of Children Tourism and Regional Studies. I am also ready to speak about finance, but I want to answer your question, of course. Okay, just a couple of words, because we need to sum up our session. So the model that we've discussed today in contemporary environment, do you think its perspective to upscale through the country and to bring it to other regions, the system of education and this mass involvement of children through schools into active tourism, it's a working model, there's no question. As everything in our country, it does require a strong hate from above, from the government, I must say. So yesterday we shared, and here we had this federal center. There should be a structure in the government. It's not only the Ministry of Education that should take care of children tourism. It's just something else as part of the activities of the Ministry of Education. Unfortunately, the Coordination Council on Children Tourism does not exist anymore as part of the government, and they didn't come up with anything else, something like this. So we must have any structure that would be part of the government, and they would motivate the Ministry of Education and involve Ministry of Education to promote such values. And at that time, the Vice Prime Minister Ms. Galadets agreed on my proposition to have the Year of Children Tourism. And there is a decision, but there is no the decree of the president, and we don't have the decree of the president, and we don't do anything. So we don't have this, as we say, governmental will to implement it. So unfortunately, the government doesn't do it, and I'm so unhappy about this. And again, there are gaps in terms of changing the responsible institution for implementation of this initiative. So it's a matter of will, and if there is a state will, we can do it very promptly, proactive, and on time. So, but I think that we are very good in coming up with these roots and grounds, and now we work from down top, but we understand that we need this top-down approach. Okay, now we want to close our session with very motivational video.
Московских школ 1210 446 444 и 892. С удовольствием участвуем в программе «Директор в поход».
Самое важное в походе это...
We are principals involved in the project, a director or a principal on a trip. The most important is to trust each other. It's not a matter of procurement and weather. So the main thing is the team, and everybody agrees that through such trips, a person gains a lot. This is really fun, and there are many gains. A trip is, of course, a very good thing, but there are trips that will be remembered for 50 years. When kids are back home, they are more open, they are happier. It feels like the trip is the success story. Who takes trips? Romantic people take trips, particularly in autumn. I've been to Crimea many times, but it was the first time in my life that I really rediscovered Crimea. Vast rivers, the gorges, caves, waterfalls, particularly when you climb some mountain and you see the panoramic view, the stunning view, which is dazzling. This is very memorable. We travel together with the Association of Travelers, and we are very happy when new members join us. This is the most important thing. Well, superb. Thank you very much. Thank you for participation.